So recently, after one of the classes, one of my coaches pulled me aside and he was asking me about a situation that happened with one of our students at a competition. So basically, our student, who's been doing really well, winning tournaments, winning matches, making tons of progress inside the gym, doing great, experienced something that every one of us as a competitor will experience, and that is he had his first loss. In fact, he had several losses in the same day, which he's never had before. And my coach was talking to me and he said, man, he's not like the same person right now. He was doing great and now he's discouraged, and at the tournament he was crying, he was super upset, he was dealing with it really poorly, and he's just wondering what he could do to help him out. And I talked to him and gave him some advice, reminded him that a lot of people get discouraged like that at first. Like I know I was when I first lost. I cried, got discouraged, got upset and everything else. And I gave him some advice on how to deal with it. But I was also thinking about some ideas, and I told him, I said, man, this is a great chance for this kid to grow. And then when I was leaving that night, I was thinking about it. And recently, a few of you guys sent me questions that were worded differently, but basically they came down to the same idea of, Chewy, what has jiu-jitsu and combat sports given you that is translated over into things off the mat? What has jiu-jitsu done to help you learn more about yourself? These kinds of things, more philosophical ideas, right? And two of the things that I know from jiu-jitsu and wrestling, and it's kind of hard to think about because I became an adult with grappling. I mean, I started grappling when I was 15 years old. I'm 35 now. I've been grappling since I was for 20 years. And I've done boxing and kickboxing and MMA along in there too. But the things that I learned, especially from jiu-jitsu and wrestling competitions, there's two things that I want to pluck from this experience that I think could be useful to some of you guys coming up and for those of you that asked this question. So the first thing is that when we're in those situations where we lose, and again, every competitor knows this, you're going to lose. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. How you deal with those losses is going to be is going to directly reflect how good you get at this stuff. And one of the things is if you keep on the journey, right, you become hardened. You become less sensitive to failure. You have to be, because you can't get bent out of shape every time you lose because it happens too much, right? Not for everybody, but for a lot of people it happens a lot. I've lost more matches than I can remember. I've won a lot more, but I still lost plenty. And again, you can't simply lose it every time you fail. And one of the things you also learn is you learn to embrace those losses because you don't have a choice, right? I like this, that's why I made the shirt, right? It's the old military saying, embraces suck. I love that because, again, you have to embrace those failures. And I can tell you that thing, being able to just go with the failures and understand it's just sort of par for the course, that's translated over into life in innumerable ways. Where every time I start something, I know I'm going to fail. Anytime I get into some new thing, new project, new business venture, whatever it is, I know I'm going to fail. I know I'm going to just eat dirt, and I'm going to have to dust myself off and get back up and do it again. And it's been really helpful. And I know that you probably know people. You might be one of them, where there's so many people that can't even start things, not because they even failed, but because the fear of failure itself stops them dead in their tracks, so they don't even do anything. Whereas if you're a grappler, or if you're a combat athlete, you know deep down that failure is just par for the course. You don't have a choice, so you got to go through it. And so you learn to embrace that. You learn, first off, who you really are when stress gets really tough, and then you learn how to embrace those failures, and you become hardened to them and less sensitive to them. It's very important. The next thing that I'd share with you is that I got this from wrestling. I noticed this the first time from wrestling, and it's another quality that you'll get from combat sports. Those one-on-one fighting sports like boxing and everything else. And I noticed this the first time in high school where I remember playing football. And I remember in football, we had a pretty good team. We'd win most of our games, but we still lost a few. And I remember when we would be down on ourselves, right? When we would be losing and we would come back to the locker room at halftime and we'd be sitting around, the finger pointing would start, right? Everybody would be upset with each other. It'd be like, you didn't block for me, or you didn't throw the ball right, or you didn't do this right. And I was on the O-line, right? I was an offensive lineman because I was a big boy back then. And we got crapped on by everybody because if we mowed down every person on defense and they ran that ball, we didn't get any credit for it. But if for some reason we didn't do our job that one play, it'd be all over us, right? Just side tangent again. But it would happen, and the coaches would have to come in and shake us up, like, hey, stop it, we got to play together as a team, that kind of thing. But in wrestling, it wasn't like that. I remember going over into wrestling after football and starting to wrestle, and you quickly realized you don't blame anyone when you lose because, first off, who are you going to blame? It was you on the mat. It wasn't anybody else with you. You lost, not someone else. You work harder. But also, I remember seeing some of the people that would blame the circumstances. It was the ref's fault. He did this. He made this bad call, or my opponent cheated or something, or this was the reason I couldn't cut the weight that I needed for weigh-ins. They would make excuses, and those people, just from observation, you quickly realize that those people that were focused on all this other stuff, they didn't do very well. They didn't get very good. And again, thinking about that, one of the things I've gotten from this stuff is you're always faced with two sets of circumstances. There's the stuff you can control. There's the stuff you cannot. And the stuff you cannot, you can't put as much focus on it as the stuff you can, because this is what you have control over, right? And we all know people that it's someone else's fault, right? We all know people that are like that. It's always someone else's fault. And you learn also about how important that lesson is. Even this last year has been especially important, where none of us have control over, very few of us have control over the government restrictions going on us. We have very little control of a virus that nobody's seen before. Have very little control of a lot of the circumstances that are happening, but you got to figure out, okay, what are you going to do with this? Are you going to be at stores because you're getting stressed out now and the pressure's on and you're going to go fight old people for toilet paper and groceries in the store? Or are you going to do something else? Are you going to focus on what you can do and what you have control over, and you can sort of focus on something a little bit more useful, right? And so for me, I've found, again, innumerable ways when I look back on it where that focus on what I have control over has directly impacted my life for the better. And again, I've actually sent my old wrestling coach a message telling him this kind of stuff, because I don't think if it was for wrestling, I would have gotten into the trajectory that I am. And I think it's helping me out in so many ways, both with wrestling, jiu-jitsu, combat sports, and everything else. And so, again, the way that I look at it is two of the most valuable lessons that I got from wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and combat sports that have translated both on and off the mat in just it's countless ways, right? And helped me develop a strong character. One is the ability to become less sensitive to failure, to become hardened, be able to, like the saying goes, embrace the suck. And then when those things come, when crap hits the fan, right? You have those two choices. You focus on what you can do, what you have control over, and you would adapt, right? Embrace and adapt. And so those are just two of the things that I've learned from it. I'll be doing more videos like this just because it's an interesting idea, and I'm kind of having to dig in and think about, what have I actually gotten from this stuff that's mentally there, because there's so much and it's hard to sort of pick it apart. But those are two things that I definitely got from combat sports, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu. So hopefully this idea is useful to you. Hopefully it's just an idea to chew on that you find interesting. And I'll talk to you guys next time.